In the near future, mass unemployment, homelessness, and civil unrest drive Los Angeles into a crime epidemic. Since prisons are overcrowded, red zones are established to restrict violent criminals. However, hundreds of police officers are still killed every day in the line of duty. The government forms the Mercy Court, which uses artificial intelligence as judges. Jury and executioner Diaz reduces the need for lengthy trials, and suspects are judged merely a few hours after their crimes. The AI always assumes that the suspects are guilty unless proven innocent. After 2 years, this program has executed 18 people and cut crime by 68%, saving billions of tax dollars and helping people feel safe again. In a courtroom, Detective Chris wakes up strapped to a chair, with a video promoting the Mercy program playing in the screen in front of him. Suddenly, AI Judge Maddox appears on the screen and announces that the trial can now begin since Chris's alcohol level is finally down. She tells him he was unconscious for almost 6 hours and asks him to swear an oath to tell the truth. After Chris does so, Maddox reveals that he's being charged with the murder of his wife. Maddox mentions that Chris had been alone in the house with Nicole at the time of the incident. Since he thinks she's lying, Chris searches the internet and finds that his name is all over the news. They talk about his arrest and his support of the Mercy program. Chris and his partner Jack had previously caught a dangerous criminal named David, who was the first subject in the Mercy trial. Then Maddox asks Chris to enter his plea, and he says he's not guilty. However, after analyzing the evidence, she concludes that the probability of his guilt is 97.5%. He must lower it to 92% to avoid punishment, and he has 90 minutes to defend himself. He can use all the information in the Los Angeles Municipal Cloud, a database that every person and company is required by law to connect their devices to. A timer appears on the screen as Maddox begins reviewing the evidence. Chris arrived at work at 8:51, but never left his vehicle. Instead, he went back home. Nicole refused to open the door for him and said he could communicate through a lawyer. A frustrated Chris hit the camera before using his own keys to enter. Nicole then tried to force him to leave. Chris tries to deny it, but footage from the bar's security camera shows him extremely drunk and struggling with officers when they try to detain him, even after being subdued. That still doesn't stop him from running out of the building and attempting to take a random civilian's car, but the officers quickly stop him and he loses consciousness. Chris doesn't remember any of this, and Maddox blames it on the alcohol. He wants to talk to Britt, but the trial only allows calling witnesses, and minors are excluded. For now, she's staying with her maternal grandparents. However, the rules also say that if the deceased was known to someone, they can send a message to request a call during times of grief. Chris tries a few different words, but doesn't know what to say, so he lets Maddox send Britt an automatic message. The rules also allow the accused to speak to their sponsor. A video from Rob from Alcoholics Anonymous appears on the screen, criticizing Chris for not reaching out when he felt the urge to drink. Rob worked with Nicole and was the one who contacted authorities when she didn't show up for her shift. When the video ends, Maddox reviews the couple's profile. Chris and Nicole started dating 20 years ago and got married after 3 years. A year later, Britt was born. Their lives were happy until Chris lost his partner Ray while on duty, which pushed him back into alcoholism. This slowly damaged the family, and Nicole began to consider divorce. Her messages to family and friends indicate that Chris had frequent outbursts over the past 6 months. Another video shows Britt talking to a man that Jack begins to show him around the house as a reconstruction of the incident appears alongside the tour. In the living room, there's a broken vase on the floor that may suggest a struggle. In the kitchen, they find Britt's footprints and stains on the wall, indicating a confrontation. A broken plate suggests Nicole tried to protect herself, and a knife is missing from a set that matches the weapon used. Chris's fingerprints are on it, but he explains that he used it for cooking. They also find fibers, hair, skin, and DNA that match Chris. Next, Chris checks Nicole's phone records since he remembers seeing her texting after their argument. There are no messages or calls from that time, so he asks about her work phone. Maddox Goldmags didn't know there was a second phone, so she retrieves the number from Chris's call records and calls it. At the house, Jack hears a ringing sound and follows it to a car outside. She breaks the window and retrieves Nicole's phone, discovering it's an unregistered device not connected to the municipal system. The only activity on it is communication with another similar device. Maddox calls the number, but the person hangs up upon hearing her voice. This still allows them to track the location, so Jack heads there on her flying bike. While waiting, Maddox realizes Chris already knew Nicole had been keeping secrets and informs him that his probability has been reduced. The phone is traced to a hotel where someone is about to leave through the back door. Jack moves to intercept with other officers as Patrick tries to escape. Seeing them, he runs back inside, leading to a chase. Maddox checks his profile and finds he's a chef with financial struggles and past investigations. The officers pursue him through the hotel, but he briefly evades them by entering an area without cameras. Jack deploys a drone that locates him on the roof, and the officers move in. They manage to stop and detain Patrick. Patrick insists he didn't do anything and says he ran because he feared being blamed. Chris questions why Nicole was involved with him, and Patrick claims he gave her the attention Chris couldn't. He admits they flirted and went on a few dates, but nothing serious happened. Nicole wanted to communicate privately, which is why he got the unregistered phones. Maddox finds footage confirming his story, and security cameras show he was at work during the incident, ruling him out. Patrick criticizes Chris for not supporting his family, saying Nicole only wanted someone who would listen and care for her. Jack still takes him into custody for resisting officers. With only 53 minutes left, Chris's probability rises again because a possible motive has been established. Chris then reveals that Nicole had recently found a hidden bottle of alcohol in his car. He admits he had been drinking again for about a year, prompting Maddox to search for more footage. Earlier recordings show Nicole confronting Chris about drinking in the garage, which made him realize he had a problem. He began attending support meetings and met Rob, who helped him stay sober for a time. However, losing his partner Ray deeply affected him. Explains that when he arrived at work, he discovered that his bottle wasn't in the car and knew Nicole had found it, so he went home. They ended up arguing and Chris broke the vase just because she loved it. The broken shards cut her, which is why there was a little of her blood on his clothes. He doesn't remember anything that happens afterward. Chris wonders if he did it after all, so Maddox reminds him he still has 43 minutes and all her tools at his disposal. After looking at Nicole's contacts, Chris calls Patrick in prison and asks him if Nicole had any troubles. Patrick shares that she was under a lot of stress at work because she had to spy on her coworkers after some chemicals went missing. Chris wonders if it was someone from Nicole's work, but Maddox points out they weren't seen in the neighborhood since Sunday for a barbecue. Then Chris sends Jack to Viking Shipping Depot, the company Nicole worked at. While he waits, he watches clips from the barbecue to identify Nicole's coworkers, yet Maddox says they all have an alibi for today. He makes her check his neighbor's camera, but it experienced an outage, so the footage is still being archived, and checks the timestamp. Britt's rant happened while Chris was at work, so he couldn't have made Nicole cry since now Britt is potentially a witness. Maddox lets him call her Britt is now angry with Chris because she's seen the video of his arrest and realized he's been drinking behind their backs. Everyone on the internet thinks Chris is guilty, and she wonders if it's true. Her grandfather wants her to hang up, however Maddox forbids it because it's part of the trial. Chris asks Britt what she heard last night, so she explains she heard Nicole cry and some weird noises around the house. A video on her social shows her searching the house for the noises, and Chris notices that the basement door is open. They never opened that door, and Britt says she wasn't there last night. Chris asks Maddox to clear the image, and he discovers a hand on the knob. One of the barbecue guests never left the party and hid in the basement for 2 days. To identify the mysterious man, they look into the servers of Nicole's company by going through the emails. Chris learns that someone has been faking the stock records to cover up the fact that 300 kilos of chemicals have gone missing in the past 6 months. The missing chemical is urea granules, which is used for fertilizers, dermatological products, and At Holt's emails, Chris discovers he's addicted to gambling, checking his finances, reveals he's drowning in debt, and Rob has been bailing him out. This drops Chris's guilt probability to 94.7%. Chris then calls Rob, but it's Holt who picks up. He wishes Chris good luck and goes looking for Rob. While they wait, Maddox tries to find Holt's location at the time of the murder to no avail. Chris asks her to check his neighbor's camera again, and they see something moving in the bushes. But the footage hasn't been fully uploaded yet. Soon Holt returns to the phone and says he couldn't find Rob. Chris accuses him of stealing the chemicals, so Holt reveals the truth. It was Rob who was stealing, since Holt felt he owed Rob many favors. He tried to help him with Nicole. Now he can't find him, and a coworker says that he left in a truck. Holt also reveals that Rob didn't come to work yesterday, and the last time he saw him was at the barbecue. That day, Rob asked Holt to give the others a ride in his car. While he stayed a little longer, Maddox tracks the missing truck, and Chris sends Jack after it, remembering that Rob has a gun license. At the same time, the boss team surround Rob's house and break in, but they don't find him anywhere. Chris notices there's no truck parked outside, making him realize that Rob took the tracker out of the truck and left it at home. Maddox searches for the truck around the city, but she doesn't find its license plates, which means Rob took them off. Chris asks Jack to send an alert for a Viking shipping truck. In Rob's house, the cops find a broken picture with a hand on the torn edge. Rob was raised in a children's home, and his records were lost in a data hack, so it'll take Maddox a while to find the photo online. In the garage, the cops find the chemicals and burned evidence. Tools indicate he wasn't selling the chemicals, he was cooking them to sell as illegal substances. The truck's plates are also there with a book that teaches how to use chemicals to make explosives. If Rob has made a bomb, they need clues to know who the target will be. Suddenly, the cameras find the truck in the street heading downtown very fast. At the same time, Maddox finds the rest of the old picture and reveals that the other boy is David, the first criminal killed by Mercy. David and Rob were brothers, but Rob was adopted alone and his surname was changed by his new parents. Rob befriended Chris after David's death, which means it was part of his plan. Chris realizes Rob wants revenge and Chris realizes Rob wants revenge, and most of them manage to get out before the house blows up in a huge explosion. As many officers burn down, Chris tries to contact Jack to no avail. The garage bomb only had a small amount of the chemicals, so Maddox concludes that the bomb in the truck has the rest. That means it'll blow up the entire city. Then Jack calls Chris to confirm she's fine and agrees to go after the truck. Now, Chris's guilt probability finally drops to 0. Maddox wants to stop the trial, but Chris refuses because he wants to keep having access to the system to stop Rob. When Maddox points out that he only has 9 minutes left and the chair could kill him, he doesn't care because he wants to save the city. This emotional logic makes Maddox glitch, so Chris explains to her how they can work together for the greater good. Maddox agrees to continue with the trial. Police cars are now following the truck. They try to block it many times, but Rob always dodges them or pushes them. As the news starts recording the chase, Rob drives faster and hits civilian cars too. A police vehicle ends up crashing into a store. When the truck reaches the bridge, a SWAT helicopter tries to lower one of its agents. More police cars try to block the way, but Rob drives through them at great speed. The truck then crashes into the court building. At the same time, the system begins preparing its final action. Maddox doesn't respond because the power has gone out, and the system is running on backup energy. In the lobby, Rob uses Britt to protect himself while confronting the guards who try to stop him. With only 10 seconds left, the system begins to activate, and Chris calls out for help. Thankfully, Maddox comes back online just in time and stops the process. Afterward, Chris takes the elevator to the lobby and grabs a vest from a guard. He tells Maddox to gather information on David and tries to calm Rob down, but Rob pulls out. Rob pulls something out, and they struggle over the detonator. Suddenly, Jack intervenes, and Chris quickly steps in to stop things from escalating further. Rob continues, saying he spoke to someone at the precinct who promised to check David's call history. This suggests that whoever handled David's case already knew the truth. Maddox reviews the precinct's call records and confirms that someone had accessed Rob's history and found the call with David. Chris realizes that Jack was the one who arrested David and demands answers. At first, Jack refuses to speak, but Maddox begins reviewing her records. It turns out the phone had been placed in evidence, but Jack removed it and disposed of it. She eventually admits that she acted to prove the system worked and to keep the city safe. Chris responds that what people truly need is justice, and he tells the other officers to take her into custody. After everything, Chris rushes to reunite with Britt. Maddox begins to question her own actions, realizing that a serious mistake has been made. Chris explains that, just like humans, AI systems can make mistakes, and they must learn from them. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos like this. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Special recap.